for, I'm about to promote her to Congresswoman, but she's still a council member, so. And then we will get started here. Sorry, I let you leave and then. All right, are we recording?
Yep.
We are recording. Great. Thank you very much. Welcome to our August 1st work session for the City Council. Normally we start with board and commission interviews. We do not have any this evening. Is there anything that any member of the council would like to review on the regular agenda or staff? You'd think I'd get that right at some point. All right, I'm going to take that as a no in terms of reviewing the regular agenda, and we'll go ahead with updates. And Sarah, why don't we start with you?
I don't have any tonight.
Well, that's going to be easy then.
No updates, Mayor.
Business Development Commission met last Thursday and they had a presentation by Patrick Murphy and Pam Niehaus from the Webster Arts. Webster Arts is celebrating their 20th anniversary. And they were just there to talk about that, and they're looking for a liaison from the BDC to help collaborate on events, or if they get ideas, brainstorm, etc. Under the whole idea that arts bring business to Webster Groves. And then they talked about their next networking coffee with other business owners, and that is going to be August 30th at the Recplex. That's all I
August
have.
30th. Is that another one where the mayor's supposed to go?
Yes.
Put it on the calendar then. All right, David?
Nothing.
I'm going to ask Neil. We're going to let Emily actually sit down before I start asking her questions. Do you have anything, Mr. City Attorney?
I do not.
All right, Dr. Peoples?
No, ma'am, I do not.
Okay, I'm going to do a song and dance and give her a minute. Anything from you, Katie?
No, thank you.
I do have a few things. The Charter Review Advisory Board is having their community open house a week from tomorrow at the Rec Center. Everyone got a postcard. So if you would, I know that Jeannie Kirkton, who's chair of that board, put a bunch of stuff on social media today. If you would share that out with your contacts, that would be great. They're hoping for a big turnout. And just a reminder that this is their meeting and they want to run it. And I think we should give them the space and freedom to do that. We had in the Webster Kirkwood Times in the last edition, the first announcement of the Missouri Good Neighbor Award. I've received 2 nominations. I believe it'll be in this week's Friday page, and then I'll put some things on social media. So if you would also share that out or let people know about that. We'd love to recognize as many good neighbors as possible. And this, just so you all know, I have agreed to be on the legislative committee of the St. Louis Municipal League. So if you have anything that you think we really need to put on the agenda of the Muni League for this, the legislative session in Jeff City, please let me know, and I'll certainly raise those at our meeting. All right. Emily, hi.
Hi.
Anything from you?
No, actually.
Well, look at
nothing to
that.
report.
All right, we're just going to move right along here. And so we're going to go to our topics, and we're going to start with the Women's Empowerment Series update. Lynn O'Brien is with us, who is, I don't remember exactly what title we gave you, except cool person. Okay, Women's Empowerment Coordinator, who I already know does good work. I was supposed to, what was that? Wonderful was supposed to be the word, but it was a fantastic first presentation with Christy Jackson. Looks like we're getting lots of traction in the community. Thank you for that. And I think you can come on down. And I really want you to ask you to sing while you do this as well, because I know you're very good at that. But no, how about just an update from you and any questions we might have from council. So thanks for being
Sounds
with
great.
us.
Thank you, Mayor Arnold, and hello, everyone. I'm Lynn. I'm very excited this summer to be working as Women's Empowerment Coordinator. So we are one into a 3-part webinar series. We've worked with really fabulous local speakers to present different messages on aspects of running a business, both for women who might just have an idea and women who have been in business for many years. So we've put together a really dynamic 3-part webinar series. We had 59 folks register for the first one. We have 72 folks registered for this next one. So I imagine the numbers will keep going as we approach our 3rd webinar next week. Lots of good engagement in the chat and questions as well. So I'd love to tell you a little bit more about it. Yes, in speaking and not in song for this time around. Our first webinar was called Bizpiration, Business Inspiration to Help You Maximize Your Growth. And our speaker was Christy Jackson, who is the Executive Director of the Center of Innovation and Entrepreneurship at Harris Stowe State University's Anheuser-Busch School of Business. She's a consultant, coach, author, and professional speaker. She's been working hard in St. Louis for 20 years and just had incredible energy and incredible insights for our attendees. The webinar that we'll be hosting on Thursday is with Gabriela Ramirez Arellano, who is a host of a podcast. She's originally from Mexico and returned to St. Louis in 2016. She centered her volunteering efforts around supporting small businesses, economic development, and language access. And I had the privilege of meeting with her earlier this week just to review her content, and I know she'll make a big difference for those involved, and especially in our Spanish-speaking community. And then next week's webinar will be called Leverage Your Network, Build Meaningful Connections, and Unlock Opportunities with Precious Simone, who is a 2-time best-selling author and inspirational speaker. And she'll be sharing about how to really think through the diversity of your current network, including the person you met at the store, the person you met in line, including folks from your past and present, to really think of how to build out your professional network. So folks who attend this free webinar series have an opportunity as well to apply for a $1,500 micro grant if they're identifying as women living in Webster Groves, and if they attend all 3 webinars or watch recordings, which are made available a few days after. That's kind of their ticket to do a fairly simple application process to be considered for a $1,500 micro grant opportunity. And Dr. Peoples and I are putting together a small committee to help with that selection process, but funds would be awarded by the end of August. Again, for anyone in any stage of business development who's contributing to this local community. Any questions? We're very excited about it.
Anybody have questions?
Sounds great.
I just, before we go, want to make 2 shout outs, 3 shout outs maybe. One is just a reminder to anybody who might be involved in this, that the funding for this comes from a grant from the National League of Cities, which was made possible by our work with United We on the appointments project. So thanks to United We and the NLC. I also want to say a thank you to Dr. Peoples, who, when we started to think about what this grant might look like, came up with the general framework here. And I think that it's thanks to Lynn also, because you're really realizing, I think, what that can be. So we really appreciate it. And I know this is something new that we haven't done before, and it's nice to try new things. So thank you very
Yeah.
much.
Absolutely. Yeah, we're learning a lot. And thanks to Dr. Peoples for all your support.
All right. I
Okay.
think we're going to let you off the hook then.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Lynn. Thank you.
Not so much true for you, Scott. Come on down. Yeah,
Yeah,
there. Well, I know Lynn sings very, very well. I don't know that about you yet.
You'll want me to stop quickly. if I
Yeah,
start singing.
and so let me just frame this for a second, because I know you're going to ask us for some things. For my colleagues, we really have 3 related decisions coming up. One is the timing of the bond issue. And if we want to go for April, we're going to need to make that decision, I think, probably tonight. We're going to have to choose a pool option, which I really, if we can, would like us to choose that option tonight. And then we'll talk more about kind of the package of parks related things that might go forward. And that can be a little further down the line because we need recommendations, obviously, from staff. So I just want to remind everyone that we've got those 3 decision points. All are time sensitive, but the first one is absolutely time sensitive. All right, Scott, thank you very much.
That was a fantastic end of the very first slide, which is the timeline of where we're at in the process. And there is some potential for some of the end pieces of this to move around, but we started the master plan last fall, winter. Did a couple meetings, December and January, presented to you all at the beginning of summer. So the master plan is finalized now. We do have that document in hand. We'll get that posted up online so that all the residents can also take a look at it if they would like. It is in the agenda packet for tonight. Next phase would be after the questions that you referenced and answered tonight, is starting the construction document phase. So start the nitty gritty of the actual design and how that's going to look. And then once we get into that process, we'll have a little firmer numbers for bond informational campaign so that we can let the residents know what it is exactly we're looking for, what those numbers might be for that eventual ballot issue sometime next year. And then probably looking at construction at the end of the 2025 pool season. And with weather permitting a decent winter, we'd be able to open by Memorial Day of that following year. So a lot of times what pools do is they'll close down about August 1st. So you lose the last month of the 1 year. That way you can get open for the beginning of the summer the next year. Historically, we have more attendance at the beginning of the summers than we do at the end. So that if you're going to lose a month, you'd rather lose it on the end of the previous season. So that's kind of the timeline. Like I said, the construction and the grand opening could slide forward, but that would be a pretty tight timeline, depending on bond issue and all the other questions that go. Any questions on the timeline?
I do have one question. So
Yes, sir.
built into your timeline, is there any wiggle room in case materials are hard to get by, labor is not available, things of that nature? Or is this just a very tight timeline?
It's building these pools are tight timelines. Yeah, we're talking 3 years out still. So, you know, it's hard to project that far out as far as materials and such go. And we haven't really designed it yet. So we don't know which materials we're looking for. I think in the recreation and pool industry, they're freeing up again. They're not so restricted as they have been over the last 2 years. For the parts and stuff that we're getting today, we're not waiting nearly as long as we were. So especially if we're looking at not going till the end of August of 2025, we should be able to pre-order a lot of those supplies in. If the bond issue would pass in 24, we have 18 months potentially before we would even start construction, so that we could start getting those orders for the big slides and things like that take months to procure and build and ship from Canada or wherever they're coming. But the actual construction timeline is pretty tight in that 9-month window over the winter. With the terrible winter, super cold, super wet, you probably see delays and maybe not open till a July 1 instead of a June 1 or somewhere in that neighborhood.
Yeah, that was one of the items in the presentation I read, that making sure you have the labor to do the job was a concern, I guess, of the company that's going to put it in for us.
Scott, if I can just hop in briefly on the finance side, council member, we expect if there's an April election, that really about July 1, we can effectively sell the bonds to have the money to obligate for purchases and such. So just give you a sense of a couple months needed after to create a tax-free bond sale in that
Okay.
process.
Thank you.
All right. Next slide is the expenses versus the revenue. So this is about a 5-year trend pattern of what we've got going. There are some major bullet points at the bottom of this to explain this graph a little bit. The first one is that in fiscal year 19 was the last year that our utilities were billed directly into the aquatic center budget. So we have the Parks and Recreation Department has a bunch of different program areas. The rec center is one, recreation is one, aquatics is one, ice rink is one, fitness is one. So these numbers are just that line item grouping for the aquatic center and the revenue that comes in for the aquatic center. So in fiscal year 19 was the last year we did utilities. After that, we centralized those. All the utilities came up here to City Hall into a different budget. Fiscal year 20 and 21 were the COVID years. Those are both smaller on both sides because we didn't open the 1 year, which crossed 2 fiscal years for us. And then fiscal year 24 is the first year that we removed any of our full-time salaries with a staffing change, with some retirement of staff. And to centralize things and just make it easier, instead of having 25% of a full-time recreation superintendent go to the aquatic center, we just brought that all into the recreation 20 account. And instead of having 25% of the ice rink and facility superintendent also in the aquatic center, we moved that just into the ice rink, just to make it easier to budget and look at numbers. So those numbers are down. Salaries have increased tremendously. Part-time salaries in fiscal year 2019 or 200,000 basically. This year, we're looking at 326,000. So quite the jump in salaries. Those are part-time salaries. That's, based on the minimum wage increase that we've seen over the last 5 years with state law. We went from $8 an hour to $12 an hour. Lifeguards are now making $15 and $16 an hour for starting guards. Recreation staff as of July 1 is now making part-time is $14.54 is our minimum wage, which is a couple dollars above the minimum wage to try to attract and retain quality employees. So that part-time salaries increased quite a bit. Fiscal year 24 that we're in right now, this is how our budgets typically look when we present them to you guys. My expenses are a little bit higher than the revenue. That's as pretty standard the way that we budget for the aquatic center. As you can see in most of the previous years, by the time you finish that fiscal year, you've seen a switch on those, that expenses came in below budgeted and revenue typically exceeds. That's pretty standard for the aquatic center, but it's really weather dependent. Some years it's been a very small increase. If it's been a ton of rain days and you don't get as many daily admissions, or quite frankly, if it's 100 degrees like it was last week, less people come when it's 190 and sunny is our sweet spot. So if we can get 100 days of 90 and sunny, the aquatic center will be crazy busy and we'll have good revenues. But that's, it's a tough toss up there.
You're definitely gonna have to sing for that.
Yeah, I might. The last two columns are the replacement value from the master plan. There was 5 options really presented. We originally did options 1, 2, and 3. We heard from just about everybody that those were too small. And so we came back with the replacement option, which gives the basically same water footprints as we have now, the 3 pools, the comp pool, the middle pool for the middle-aged kids, and then a toddler pool, and then the indoor option there at the end. All 4 of those columns are pulled directly out of the master plan document and the costs presented from our consultant in that document.
So if we're looking at the projection for replacement, again, weather dependent, there could be a closer match there? Or is it just maintaining the first year of this pool and figuring everything out and getting it done? We're unlikely to get there.
If I had to lay a $1 bet with you, I would think that you would see those even out, if not switch up.
Okay.
That replacement value does include, he's got all the utilities in there. He's got all the staffings in there.
Okay.
And so we'll cover that on the next couple slides.
Okay.
So the numbers are a little bit higher than they are like in fiscal 24, because again, we don't have the utilities in there right now. We don't have full-time staff salaries in there and such. He does have those in the main document so we can get a full picture of the actual cost of what it would be to run and operate and not have things separated out into different pots.
You also then have the indoor option.
Correct. Yes.
And is that indoor, those bars, is that just the addition for the indoor?
That
we
would
did
be
the
on
indoor,
top
it
of the
would be like
replacement. Yep. So you'd
stacked.
have the replacement and then you would stack those indoor numbers on top of the replacement numbers. All right. Whoop, I went to. So I was talking about our fiscal year 24 budget. This is what it is for just those aquatic center line items. Expenditures this year were estimated for $372,000. About a little under 20% of that is the part-time salaries and benefits. That's just the recreation staff. That's not our lifeguard services staff. Supplies and materials is only about 6%. That's your shirts, plumbing supplies, new umbrellas, things of that nature. And then the big thing is 75% is the contractual services. That's the lion's share of that is your lifeguards and your lifeguard management contract that we have. And then a few things with swim team league fees and St. Louis County permit fees and things like that. But the lion's share of that is contractual. And then the revenue for this year, about 350,000. So just a little bit under those expenditures, about 40% daily admission, 43% in memberships, and about 17% on your programs and rentals. And that's a pretty good trend of what we see year over year on those. Again, if I'm standing here this time next year, you'll probably see a flip in those two, and it'll be more like 350 expenditures and 375 or 400 in revenue, assuming we have a good quality year of weather for us.
So our cost recovery, I see down there is 94% just for the aquatic center. And 75%, is that with everything or?
Yeah, so the 94% again is just in that aquatic center, 21 aquatic center line item. When you go in to add in utilities, if I added back in those full-time staff, excuse me, if I added back in some of those full-time staff hours that go into running it and such, then you would come down closer to that 75% number. I took the utility numbers directly out of you'll see them on the next couple of slides, out of that master plan that Councilman Hunsaker built for us, so we have using the same numbers to look at other things. It's really tough to itemize our utilities because we only have one account for the rec center. You know, we only have 1 meter for water. Well, it's going to use everywhere, bathrooms, restrooms, inside the facility, as well as the pool. So that's why I use those utility numbers out of the master plan for future designs.
So, but based on what we've been reading, 75% is a very good recovery cost.
Yes, sir. I would say nationally, if you read in the literatures, and he details some of that in the master plan, that about 80%, 75, 80%, somewhere in that neighborhood is nationally about what a outdoor pool will bring in.
Okay.
Mayor and council, if I may. So I asked Scott to put in that other cost recovery number, the 75%, because as you all make some very hefty decisions, I think it is important to note that there is that delta in between the cost recovery, considering there's no full-time staff included in this. So salaries have been moved out. They're certainly absorbed elsewhere. And as he's already shared the utilities. So no matter how energy efficient and all the things that we do towards building, it's fair, I believe, to assume that we're still going to have higher utility costs. We're certainly going to have higher staffing costs. Scott and I talked. I certainly think, depending on the option selected, we should finance or build in a full-time staff person as well, rather than relying on so many part-time staff people. So just food for thought as we move into this. Scott's done a great job trying to estimate it. Of course, it's incredibly hard, but the bottom line is there's going to be a gap, most likely, in between revenues and expenditures each of those years.
And it's always been that way.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And this is just the replacement option.
This is actually this year's actual budget
This is
on
this year's
this
budget.
year's pool. That's
So-
what we're looking
so
at right
This
now.
year, our recovery is.
Yes.
90%.
Yeah, so this is our baseline for comparison.
Baseline to compare off of as we move into the next couple slides. So moving into those next couple slides, here is the overall everything, all the concepts, all the construction costs, all the expenses and revenues consolidated down into one chart. There are some additional charts coming up that will break these details down further if you need them. But we heard pretty strongly from residents and users that the concepts 1 and 2 and probably 3 were too small. We're not going to be satisfactory. We'd be losing too much capacity out there. So the master plan and my recommendation is a full replacement concept. So that replacement concept, you're coming in on the total project at just under $12 million in today's dollars. I'm not, sorry, not today's dollars, $12 million as projected in the budget. There is some escalation and contingency fees on there as we move forward, but it's just, I think it's 10%. And then as you move down, your budget, including those utilities, including some staff salaries and such, and everything all in is about 550,000 with revenue about 500,000. So estimating about a $50,000 fund coming from somewhere else is a deficit there. Cost recovery then comes in about 90%.
One question, Scott. I think some of the terminology or the information from, what's the name of the company?
Councilman Hunsaker.
Yeah. He used the word renovation. There's nothing in here that's renovated. Is it?
No, this is not renovation. This is a blow it up and start all over completely fresh.
Okay. I was, what's renovation? What renovation? I don't know anything about you renovation, but that's.
No, it's the pipes underground are 30 years old and have breaks and leaks, and we're fixing those, and the concrete walls are starting to leak. We've been renovating for the last decade.
Right.
So it's time to replace now.
Scott, would you mind talking through the last two columns a little bit? Like on the capacity, the 96 for the indoor option, is that on top of the 604 or part of the 604?
That would be part of the 604. So if you do the indoor option, you're basically taking the comp pool that we have now, the lap lane and the dive tank, and you would be enclosing that somehow for 12 months
Right.
usage. So that comp pool and those capacity numbers are basically built off lap swimming. There's 8 lap lanes. You can put 4 swimmers in a lane. You can have a couple going off the diving board and such. But the numbers on those competitive swim pools are much lower than they are in the recreational pool, because you can pack more people densely into those recreational pools because you're not swimming laps back and forth. Now, if we had a Saturday morning open swim and we're not doing laps, and you're just having it open for kids to come in, you could see those numbers go up. If you only have 1 lap lane or 2 lap lanes open, but that number is much smaller than the middle pool is the largest pool for us right now that has the most capacity in it.
So the 604 includes the 96.
Yes, it
Would
would.
But would the 604 be lower if we were lap swimming in that space, or that assumes 96 in that? Do you know what I mean? Like,
I do. 604 is your maximum number that you can have.
Max.
Yeah,
could be less if we were just doing lane swimming for
Correct.
that period of time. Okay.
correct.
No, that's fine. And doesn't, I don't know.
There's a whole lot of calculations that go into
Yeah.
determining
I
what
was
those
just wondering
are.
if I should add them together, but it's part of
Yes.
that. And then, so the expense and the revenue for the indoor aquatics, that's the additional income and the additional expense.
Correct.
Just for the indoor portion.
For the 9 months of the seasons when the
Yeah.
outdoor pool is closed.
Yeah.
For those 9 months, you'd be at about $500,000 for the expenses to operate that pool and bringing in about 258,000.
So that's an interesting way to look at it. So the replacement concept is really 3 months and the indoor is like the other.
The
9.
other 9. Yep,
Yeah, okay.
absolutely.
And then the last one, the percentages on the cost recovery, how do those, and this might be on a later slide, but how do those numbers compare to the numbers we saw in the previous? Like, do they compare more than to the 90 or to the 70 number? Like, if we're doing apples and apples, what type of number is that?
Apples to apples, it'd be more of the 75 that we're at right now.
Okay.
He's got in the replacement concept and in the indoor aquatics, he has everything listed out. So he has all the utilities built in.
Yeah.
He has a full-time staff member built in. He has concessions built in on everything all included. So
So we think we'll recover more, just looking at the replacement column, we would recover more than we do now.
I think it would be very similar. Again, that's the budgeted. I was
Not
trying to
totally
explain
apples
that.
to apples, yeah.
Yeah, our budgets like this, but if you look at the actuals at the end of the year.
So at least very similar.
Yeah, if you look back at the actuals from
Yeah.
2019, 21, 22, we're actually up. So
You think this would follow that same
I
pattern?
think you'd
and
be
we
following
could
about, you'd be
pretty
about
similar?
pretty even on the outdoor option. On the indoor option, you're still going to be subsidizing
Okay.
to a pretty heavy tune.
Thank you.
Can
I ask Because I think there's a huge cost difference in which kind of indoor programming we're gonna be doing, like whether it's primarily for lap swimming or we're looking at like a YMCA kind of like really robust swim lesson program. Because in terms of expenses, but also in terms of revenue, right? Those are really different types of programs and
Sorry. And so I'm just curious about kind of which model or which, if we're averaging those together, or if we've really kind of looked like in depth at both, or because just, personal experience with kids looking for swim lessons, there's not a lot to be had in the area. There's quite a demand out there, which is why we keep seeing these swim schools kind of pop up
Right.
in retail spaces. But I'm just kind of, you know where I am in this, but I am curious about kind of which one we're looking at when we're making these like projections.
My answer would be yes.
Well, Scott, you've got a table that shows us sort of
Yeah.
what the projection's based on, so.
So we'd be trying to maximize the usage and the revenue in the best way that we can. Part of that will be dictated by what the users would eventually want and who's willing to rent it, who, we'll put lessons out there. If people take them, we'll run lessons. If they're not going as much, then we'd put more lap swim out. So a lot of that is a little bit unknown until you do it. You don't know how many teams would sign up to rent it for lap swim, for team swim, how many birthday parties you could potentially sell on Saturday afternoons, how many lessons you can do, Tuesday, Thursday night and Saturday mornings or what have you. So we would obviously be trying to program that as heavily as we could so that we could maximize the usage in there. If you look at our ice rink, it'd be the same kind of thing. You've got a bunch of different user groups and we're constantly juggling all those user groups to get them all as much usage as we can. And sometimes they're not the hours that they always want, but they'll still take them because they know if they take a little bit later hour Tuesday than Thursday, they get a little bit better hour or what have you. So it really would be a lot of mix.
Okay.
There are other slides that I said break these out in. There's three more basically. That there's a replacement option that lists all of those revenues for the replacement option. So it kind of shows your memberships and your daily admissions versus your aquatic programs, food and beverage rentals and such. And there's the same chart in there for the indoor aquatic, which kind of goes to Councilman Richardson's question. So here you got swim team rentals. Kind of the nationwide average on lane rentals is about $14 an hour, somewhere between 14 to maybe up to $20 an hour per lane is what you can normally rent them for. So if you've got 8 lanes, you're only looking at $100 an hour rental for the entire facility, which is not a fantastic amount of revenue coming in when you look at, for say, the ice rink is $250 an
I
hour.
was gonna say, can't we just do ice rink prices? I mean, that would be better.
Yeah, if people would pay for it, for sure, but I don't think they'll pay for it. So that's all the numbers that I have to share with you. I'm happy to try to answer any other questions. There's a lot of numbers on there, so feel free to ask away.
I have a question, but I don't know if it's really for you or if it's more for you, Dr. Peoples and Eric, but when we talk about the need to subsidize and to fill in for the indoor option, I know we've talked about in the past, like, where's that gonna come from? Is that an expectation that Parks and Rec covers it? Cause I don't love that answer, but I don't know where else to take it either. Have we thought about if we were to, I'm sure you have, do you have an idea of if we were to do the indoor option, what budget adjustments, what options would we have to make that work?
Thank you, Councilwoman. I think you might have asked the hardest question of the presentation.
Jump right into it.
Yeah. So regardless of options selected, we're going to have to determine as the project moves forward, how much in addition we're going to have to subsidize. So that question is there. But the short answer is no, not sure so far how we would finance that delta. daily admissions can only be raised so much, and that certainly wouldn't be a recommendation or wanting to move forward. We want people to be able to enjoy the pool and to have access. So those are conversations we'll have to have as we move forward.
Okay, do we have to decide on whether to go forward with the indoor option before we have those discussions? Like just timing wise?
In an ideal world, the answer would be yes. However, we are on a pretty serious time crunch in terms of how we move forward, as Mr. Davis presented. So it would be really helpful to know the council's option, and there are no final decisions at this stage, but if we know which option you all are leaning towards, that will give us an opportunity to go back and do some additional research.
Okay, and just like, cause I think we're just trying to lay it on the table. Like, I love the indoor option,
Mhm.
but I'm really nervous about the money. And so like, if we don't have a money issue, that would definitely sway what my personal recommendation would be. But if the money option is like, this works and we like it, then I would definitely go with the indoor. I don't have that comfort level yet.
We could sell some parkland.
I have some. I
Again,
have a
one
question.
time, one time. Go ahead, please.
I have a couple questions. I'm looking at the, I'm on page 50, 53 through 5, 6, et cetera. New support areas for the indoor pool, is that to accommodate not having to walk outside? We've got locker rooms, family changing, pool mechanical storage. Is that part of the other outdoor options and you just don't have it on here, or is that additional because we are now doing an indoor pool? Page 55.
5, sorry, what page were?
Fine.
Yes, so for the indoor pool, you would need additional spaces. For the outdoor pool, we already have a set of locker rooms and office space for the guards. But if we're taking our current layout and we're putting another structure over the top of that comp pool, we're gonna need, that's too far away from
Yeah.
our current bathhouse. So we're gonna need to build new restrooms. We're gonna
Okay.
need to build a new office space for lifeguards to be in, or a full-time staff member to be in there to supervise. So those costs are built into that indoor option as
So-
part of the
And then my
construction cost.
next question is, and I don't know if this is done, but are there sponsorship opportunities that we could sell
Certainly there are,
Okay.
well.
to increase
the-
revenue?
Yeah, there's certainly an opportunity for that. The Parks and Recreation Commission right now is actually working on a naming and some sponsorship opportunity policies that
Mhm.
we will hopefully finalize here in the coming month or so, and then we'll bring it back to the council to make sure you guys
And
are,
would that include other levels of advertising?
it certainly could. You know, one of the
Okay.
big things we've been looking at is the ice rink, the boards,
Right.
as
Yeah.
you see, things
Yeah.
like that, but it could certainly be the Scott Davis Natatorium if someone pops in with a $10 million gift.
Mhm.
That won't be Scott Davis, because I don't have $10 million.
Not
Yeah,
this Scott Davis.
I probably wouldn't be standing right here, not this Scott Davis, maybe a Scott Davis. So maybe tonight after I win the Vegas. So yes,
We're
there's
looking at
certainly.
all levels of revenue based on naming.
Certainly
naming and
we could.
advertising.
We haven't done so yet, but that could
Yeah.
certainly be part of it, as far down as the selling bricks, to put
Mhm.
on the sidewalk or the pool deck or whatever family.
Yeah, I guess I was thinking more of the repetitive cyclical type advertising. Okay. As well.
I got 3 questions, similar to Pam's. So in some of the commentary, mention was made, large number of daily admissions to non-resident. There was a plan to increase the admissions to the pool.
I think you will, over the last couple of years, we have certainly seen a large increase in those non-residents as we allowed all non-residents to come. Each year, those continue to tick higher and higher. I think if you build a brand new pool, if you build it, they will come. So I think especially those first couple of years, as it's a new facility, you'll see a large increase in influx of new folks coming to try it out.
So making it easier for non-residents to use the pool. The changes that we made is coming to fruition. I mean, it's happening.
Yes, it is. And it has, we have seen revenues increase over the last couple of years. We've been building some price increases, but also there has been tremendous addition of non-resident usages. We have seen some of our memberships go down, but the daily admissions in general have far exceeded that loss in membership fees. So,
So that was a good decision.
yes.
Good. My next question is, I think there was a comment about partnership with the Webster Grove School District. Is that something we're going to pursue or?
It certainly can be. We invited all the schools to participate in this master planning process and getting their ideas and their opinions on what they would like to see if we're building new facilities. There was some interest from some of those schools to partner. We have not moved past that original conversation. So how much they would want to partner or sponsor, those conversations have not happened as of yet. But as we move forward in this process, there is certainly an opportunity there to
That's-
have those.
That's one of our to-do items, is
Mhm.
that we are going to approach them and see what
Yes.
type of partnership we're going to do that. And then the second part of it is, how about other surrounding municipalities?
We also invited some of the surrounding municipalities to participate in this process, and we didn't have any takers in those original conversations. But we can certainly ask again as we
We-
get near to.
No, Emerson, I have talked to the mayors of both
Okay.
Shrewsbury and Rock Hill. I believe Dr. Peoples has talked to city administrators in both places. We have been told flatly no, that
Okay.
they don't want any part of the bond issue or the planning process.
Okay. Yeah, I just want to make
Yeah.
sure that we do
Yep.
approach the other municipalities, don't leave them out. They say no, they say no. But well, like David is always mentioning, that's something that we should reach out for to get more
Yeah.
participation.
And we
other
sent them both
municipalities.
letters of invitation, and then we both followed up with conversations to make sure that they had the opportunity to really think about it.
Good. I said all three.
Go ahead, Sarah.
Can you talk a little bit about the annual membership fee structure with an indoor option?
I can. That is something we have not planned for yet. I don't have a structure for it. It might be a good opportunity for us to look at our entire fee structure that we have. Most rec centers that have multiple options have an all-in fee. Ours is much more à la carte than most other ones that you can buy the outdoor pool by itself. You can buy the tennis center by itself. You can buy the fitness center by itself. You can buy the ice rink by itself. There is a full facility fee that gets you all the indoor stuff plus the outdoor pool right now. But it is still just for one person. And then it's additional for a second adult, and then it's additional for each additional child after that. That fee structure has been around for a while. It's quite frankly, it's a little problematic. It's hard to work with. And depending on the size of your family, it can get cost prohibitive. If you're a family of 7 per se, we're going to be more expensive than if you were at the city of Richmond Heights or Clayton. Well, maybe not Clayton. Some of the other ones that have a family fee. So I think there's opportunity to look at those fees depending on which options we choose to move forward with. But we have not set an actual dollar amount there. There is, I believe, did he call that out? He did not specifically, our consultant did not specifically call it out. He did it on daily attendance. So it's all over the board when you look at different facilities. None of them there's no set fee that everybody's at $200. It's 150, 175, 230. So we'll have to find that sweet spot as we decide where we're going to go, what the value is of what we build, and get some smart people around the table to determine that. I'll start that process with my staff and city administrators, and we'll take it to the Parks and Rec board, and we'll bring it up to you guys and to figure out what those fees will be.
So I guess my question is, though, there would be an expectation that would increase our revenues, at least in some capacity, because it's not really built in today, like any additional membership for a year-round pool, like
Correct.
in the model.
Correct.
So that's a piece of it, at least, even if it's a small piece, we just don't really know how much or like how impactful that would be. And I think, if there's an appetite out there, you might actually see some pretty substantial revenue come in from that for families in particular.
I think there'll be some revenue coming there. I'm not sure that I would go as substantial. Talking to my friends in other cities, all the indoor pools are running at a pretty healthy loss. So there is revenue there to be had, but
So back to my YMCA model question though, is that true for them as well?
I can't say on the why.
I know they're a different type of business.
I asked that specific question with our consultant that's all they do is the aquatic industry. And his straight answer was that no indoor aquatic center breaks even or makes money. They're all running at a subsidy off of the rest of the facility that they're with.
And that includes pools that would have this type of structure,
Yes.
of which there aren't any in our region.
Cape Girardeau is the only near one that has, they've got the bubble down there over the central pool, which was at the former high school. The high school is relocated, so now it's the middle school, but they have just a rectangle competition pool with an inflatable bubble that goes up over it 9 months of the year.
But they also operate at a loss.
They were at 28% cost recovery
Wow.
on that pool. Now, that's a pretty old pool.
We would do it better.
I would hope so. That pool was probably built 40s or 50s. It's the pool I learned to swim in and grew up swimming in. I'm from Cape Girardeau, but and they're renovating it right now to some extent, but it's still going to be a outdoor pool in the summer with a inflatable structure over the top in the winter.
Okay. And have we looked at energy efficiency in terms of like solar or other things that having like that type of roof structure might allow us, where we'll be having more light coming in than a typical building?
Not on these structures over the pool. We have been looking at it on top of the ice rink roof and some of the other roofs down there. Obviously, the filtration and things going into the pool will be much more efficient than the 28-year-old systems that we have in place now. Specifically the water filtration and the way you clean those filters, the new systems, instead of wasting 2,500 gallons of water weekly just to clean those filters out, now it does like 2 gallons a night, and it bumps it whenever it needs it, and it just flushes a little bit of water as it cleans those systems, regulates them automatically. So that'll be much more efficient in any system we go with, and we'll build as much other I'm thinking solar shades, the pavilion structures, shade structures. There's a lot of those that you can build with solar power and such. And the pool is a pretty heavy energy user. And even if you just do the outdoor option, once the pool closes, then you got the ice rink, which cycles back up, and it's also a pretty heavy energy user. So those panels could be tied into that system to offset those costs. So we'll look for all those that we can find.
Great. And then my last question is just kind of came up when we were talking about the replacement option and the locker rooms, and it hadn't occurred to me that we wouldn't be redoing that part of the facility too.
So we will be redoing that part of the facility. If you just select the outdoor option, the plan is to keep that structure. The building is okay, but replace the furniture and fixtures and stuff inside it. So we'll gut all the partitions and toilets and sinks and put new stuff in and make it look better and prettier and more up to date. But the physical structure itself, there's no reason to raise that building just to rebuild that building.
So at one point we had talked about admission, like the entry kind of changing regardless of which version we had. But that, because maybe there's some staffing efficiency to moving it to the main building, but that's not really the way that it's looking like it's going now.
With the outdoor pool, I still envision coming in the same way you are now. If we go with an indoor option for those 9 months of the year, we would not be using that exterior building. They would be coming in through the main facility and coming past the main desk and then going somehow routing through there to get out into the new bathroom locker room
Okay.
facilities.
And so when we had spoken as a council at one point about kind of, even if we don't go with the indoor option this year, but we leave the possibility open for that, there's going to be some facility conversation involved. It's not just as simple as putting the roof in when we decide we want to do indoor, right? Like we would still have to like do some renovation of the facility.
Right, that wall along the ice rink, the big brick wall, I think that's where you're gonna see would be the new restrooms and locker room facilities. And then so if you were gonna go with just the outdoor option with the option to add indoor some point in the future, you might see that competition pool shift towards the tennis courts and the skate park, Glendale Avenue a little bit, to allow for those future renovations or additions to be put in.
Okay, thanks.
And all those really are part of what you've budgeted for the indoor option.
Correct.
Right, so
That's
if we
all
did,
built in.
you know, option A now with option B potentially to come, we're all set for that, assuming we know that in advance.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, so we can lay out that footprint
Right.
now for an eventual.
Okay.
I have read this, but is there anything that illustrates the duplication that would take place if we were to do one part at the first and then later doing the outdoor or the cover?
It's just the different costs, that were,
It's completely separate.
It's-
Nothing would be, there'd be no overlap or anything. Okay.
if you wait 5 years, I would imagine your costs are gonna go up 5 years down the road with
Right.
inflation, but there's not gonna be, it's still apples and oranges either way you build them.
Okay.
Scott, are there, sorry, go ahead.
No,
Emerson.
go ahead, David.
Are there any other municipalities around the St. Louis area that are currently planning to construct a pool or remodel their pool?
Great question. I think you'll see some coming in the over the next couple of years. We were the first leisure pool, water park pool, municipal pool that was built. So you've got several that came online within 5 to 7 years after us. So I think you're gonna be seeing those coming. City of Shrewsbury's pool is not that much younger than ours. I want to say they're maybe 24 years and we're currently sitting at 28. So you'll see some of those coming on, but I'm not aware of any that I can just say off the top of my head that St. Charles is renovating theirs next week or something.
Well, the reason I ask is because how I interpret this data is that the vast majority of respondents to this survey were season pass holders. And they were also in favor of a tax increase if necessary. Now, that does not account for those that did not respond or those that are not season pass holders. So in my mind, I guess what I'm trying to say is I don't see any scenario currently where we decrease our population that goes to the pool. And so as a result, I'm just saying, like, from an economic standpoint, we're going to be effectively where we are, taking outside the indoor pool for a moment, that we should stay relatively steady after this replacement. So in my mind, I think it makes complete logical sense based off of what I see in the data to go ahead with the replacement and figure out the cost structure getting into the pool later. I mean, I'm not gonna hold my breath, but like, I'm in favor of doing the indoor pool as well. I think it makes complete sense in Webster, but to me, I see absolutely no concern at this point going forward with the replacement costs.
Okay, so let's
Sorry.
begin then.
But let me make one more
Yeah, so
correction.
before we get into our discussion, we're gonna let Scott sit down at least for a minute. So any other questions for Scott?
Yes.
Go for it.
Going tagging on to David's comment about the revenue structure. Is it possible to monitor that throughout the project? Just saying, I think it was 725, was it? And whatever the daily emissions are, okay, based on what what we select, the option we select, I can give you an approximate that the daily rate will be this. Because you have to get up to
Forecasting?
80, was 89 recovery rate.
Cost
you said
recovery.
would be. Yeah,
So you want to forecast?
yeah, just a forecast as it goes on,
I could certainly work those numbers each year as we, is that what you're asking as we move
Oh,
forward?
not
or
each year.
today?
I mean, just, based on whatever concept we approve, it's going to cost X amount of dollars. This is what I'm forecasting that the daily emissions will cost per person.
Yeah, I think if you stay with the outdoor concept, right now our admissions are $6 and $10. I think that would be a fair statement to say that we would stay at that rate or potentially increase if we have additional increases in part-time staffing labors and things like that, where we need to bump those up to $6.50 and $10.50 or something like that. If we're talking with the same type of, and that's in line with all the other community pools around, other than Maryland Heights, which has, I don't know, 10 slides or something like that. It's much more of a water park, and they're at $15, I believe, for their daily admissions. So I believe your daily admissions are going to stay about where they're at now, with maybe a slight increase over the next 2 or 3 years until this one gets built.
Okay, because we're talking about starting this, if approved, starting this project in 2023 this year, but it's not going to be finished to 2026. So you would keep track of any type of economical, not interest rates, but
Inflation.
inflation goes up, we have to pay more for salaries, how it would affect that daily rate.
Mhm.
I don't want to, I prefer not to wait until we get it opened up and say, we need to charge this.
Sure. Yeah, we have been micro increasing those over the last 5 years with the minimum wage, because that has been a huge inflationary change for us. We haven't done anything the last year or so. So, and we didn't put any in this year's budget. So it'd be, at next year's budget
We're
season.
almost starting from scratch.
Yeah.
But I do, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was
Laura.
just gonna say, this is not entirely new, because Scott does consult regularly with the Parks and Rec Commission about what our rates are and when we need them to go up. So this is not new data that you haven't been collecting over time. I just want to make that clear.
Oh, no, I know
that-
that. It's just
yeah.
that, we have a $11-12 million project, and how is that going to affect the daily rate?
But the problem, I mean, I understand what you're asking. I think it's a fair question, but we don't have any data that people are not attending our pool because of the cost. I don't see any data that's available, that good concrete data that indicates that. To me, if we're going to look at that, I think we need to have a full-on study to figure out what is the appropriate cost and how does it affect, and then target those that it does affect to understand how we can get everyone equal access to our pool.
Well, based on the projections of Scott and the vendor, that those rates, it's going to increase, correct?
He's got those averaged out to 725, but we're at 6 and 10 right now. So I think those average back out to that 725 rate that he's got in there. Is that where we're?
Yeah, so
Yeah, I just want to make sure it just don't spring up and bite us.
Yeah.
and I'm gonna suggest that we're really in the minutia right now here, and we need to
No,
make some actually
We need to look at
decisions.
this stuff at the beginning and not. the
No,
end.
you've made a clear request
Yes.
that Scott has agreed to honor. And so I think we're all on board with that. And so why don't we go ahead and, not that you get to agree, but generously going to put it that way.
I'll nod yes.
But we have some decisions to be made here. And so why don't we start with discussing whether we're comfortable with an April 2024 ballot measure. So, right, remember our three questions are April or not, what option of pool, and then what's going to go into that April ballot initiative. So just on only question number one, are we comfortable moving forward? And actually, in this particular case, we'll have to vote on a resolution at some point, but we probably need a motion from someone to suggest that April 24 is the date that we'd like to move forward.
Before the discussion?
I'm just putting out that eventually we'll need one. So we
Let's
can,
put the
we're in the
motion out
work
there.
session, so we can do it either way.
Oh, yeah.
Put the motion out there and then time for questions.
Okay, well then,
Discuss.
if you'd like to put the motion out there, please do.
Sure, I'll make a motion that we approve the replacement concept for the new aquatic center.
What are
Whoa,
we-
whoa, whoa.
I thought we were talking about
Different
the-
Question number one is timing of the,
I'm sorry, I'll make a motion that timing of the bond issue go on the ballot is April 2024.
okay, now discussion. And I got a second. Good. Look, David had a second. Yeah.
And the only thing is that we know it's a lot that we can put on the ballot. come 2024. We just have to be careful what we put out
Right.
there. You know,
Yeah,
we
and
know
so-
the election is there. And then, the master plan for for the pool is there. And then we got the charter.
Right. And, we have already
That's
talked.
TBD.
Yeah, we've already talked. So we will on September 5th have Jeannie Kirkton, Chair of the Charter Review Advisory Board, come in. She's going to review their progress. They expect to begin votes on what they might want to send to us at the end of this month. So if they have a lot of things, we've already begun discussing, can we or should we put that across different ballots? So again, there's some flexibility with the Charter Review Advisory Board if you're worried about how much is on the ballot.
Oh, yes, we need to be aware of.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Is there discussion?
I'm comfortable with April ballot.
All right.
That's
Is
my
there anyone who needs to do anything but vote at this point?
I mean, I'll just say, I think, if there is benefit to waiting till August, because you get more of the pool season in ahead of time and more chance maybe to engage with residents, leading up to that vote. I'm not gonna oppose the April date. I do feel like it's soon, but I mean, that it is what it is. It seems like for a lot of reasons, it might be the best time to do.
I mean, if we get these people out, I mean, it's pretty clear that it should, I mean, I know that it's only a small segment, but I mean, the people who use the pool, if they get out in full force and they want this, I think they can get this passed.
Okay. Any other comments before we vote on this one? All right. Katie, I think we're ready.
Yes, Mayor. Mayor Arnold,
Yes.
Councilmember Bliss,
Yes.
Councilmember Franklin,
Yes.
Councilmember Smith,
Yes,
Councilmember Alexander is absent. Councilmember Richardson,
Yes.
Councilmember Hickson Shepherd.
Yes.
Okay, so our next decision point is which, and we can do this in two ways. Somebody's gonna have to make some sort of motion, right? We're talking about, you already pretty much made the motion about the replacement option.
Yeah, I was gonna
And-
ask a point of order question. kind of.
Please.
Neil, if we all agree replacement is the best, but we are divided on the indoor pool, can you put two questions on the ballot?
The answer is a definitive maybe.
Yeah.
It depends on,
Okay.
it depends on how and what
That's a
you're
good,
phrasing.
yeah.
So again, it really comes down to, in a situation like this, I would have to get on the phone with someone from the election board and say, here's conceptually what we're thinking. How am I going to phrase that?
Well, Emily just brought up a good point. What if they only improve the indoor, not the outdoor?
Well,
We
that's,
talked about that.
Right.
there's your rub, is that you could get an election that would create an inconsistent result for you.
So we're better off from a strategic standpoint, the one question, whichever one we decide on.
Wouldn't there
Hold
be a
on, I believe,
Just and to that point about the question. So yes, the one Shannon Creighton, our bond counsel would certainly lead towards one. But again, remember the size of the bond can be set at whatever. It doesn't mean we're actually going to do it. So if you go out to the community and are approved for a bond and you could say that the plan, we're going to come back to the community to discuss whether or not the indoor pool is necessary. We don't necessarily have to issue the bonds for the indoor concept if you
Right.
feel the community needs more engagement. But that does mean that you're having a larger bond to include the potential for that. So again, whatever the number of the bonds are, we're not necessarily issuing all those bonds right away in the month after the election.
I mean, I
Sorry,
like the
cut you
idea of
off.
having a clear answer from the community about the indoor pool. Then we would know.
well, I'm gonna say that I'm not sure we're ever gonna get a clear answer from the
Yeah.
community.
Well, the vote.
If there
will.
were
Oh, you mean, I thought you meant in terms of engagement. Sorry, I misunderstood.
Correct.
Yeah.
If we are able to have a two-part question or two separate questions that we would get a clear answer. It might save a lot of
But the
conversation.
question is really about the funding, right? Like, it's not necessarily about, like, it's about, are you willing to take this, to take an increase in your taxes or which we're not really asking, right? Or because we're not really asking them, are you okay with an indoor pool? We're asking them, are you okay with this amount? right?
Well, and I don't think that's even the question because the amount is part of our general fund at this
Right.
point. So the amount itself in isolation isn't the question. It's where does the amount come from?
Right.
In order to continue to do that funding.
My concern is less about the cost, the capital cost of building the indoor,
Right.
it's the annual, and I don't know how, that's not part of the bond issue, right? I
Right.
mean, so we can figure out how to get the part of bond, that would be great, but I think we can bond issue wise and limit wise and no tax increase and all that, we have the room to do both, I think. It's just, are people comfortable with what that might mean for annual costs? I don't know how to word that.
Scott, what is our current capacity on our pools? It's 7, what?
706, I believe it is. off the top of
706.
my head.
So our replacement costs or replacement concept is going down to 604. Then the indoor aquatics based on this chart is going to be 96. So it'll be a fair state for me to say that we're going to spend maybe 3.7 million for 96 people.
No.
Whoa.
Look at the attendance line, total attendance. That's what you want to look at.
Yeah, I mean, I'm talking about it.
No, but the capacity is not the.
No
issue,
yeah,
because that's
the
the- all that
capacity
we-
is, yeah.
So total attendance is the, like, is the cumulative on your.
604.
No, down one, next line down.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Those capacity numbers are for any given moment. That's
Any
everything.
given moment.
It's kind of like fire code of this room is 135 or something like that.
Okay.
Throughout the course of the day, you may have 1,000 people come and go, but at any one time, you can only have 135 in this room. I made that number up.
Well, I think, if your point is well taken now that I understand it, Pam, which is to have a clear vote. And I think the clear vote would be if we build this indoor option, would you agree to what tax? Do we have a taxing capacity that we could go out for? It would be a whatever tax for us to understand that this is what we're using those funds for over a period of time. And I don't know that we have the capacity anywhere.
You could conceivably raise the property tax levy for that purpose if you chose. I'm looking at Neil to make sure, but that is the only authorized levy that I'm aware that you could adjust for
Okay.
a specific purpose. We don't have any more sales tax.
That's what I was thinking
authorities
of.
Other
Yeah.
than the economic development tax, which would not apply in
Okay.
this case.
Well, isn't there also the option where we build the indoor pool but don't use it?
Ever?
No, I'm not saying that ever, but say it's not, it's way too unprofitable.
So I gave you a copy of an email that I forgot to forward to you from a member of the Sustainability Commission who asked that very question. What do we do if over time it just becomes too expensive to run? I don't know. Now, I mean, I don't think that we see a lot of municipal pools sitting around empty, right? Cities find ways to continue to subsidize them at whatever rate is needed to, but that again comes at what cost?
So
Okay.
if we go out for the bond issue with a high enough level to do both, and also the property tax increase to cover the operating cost for the indoor. If they both pass, then we're golden. If the property tax increase doesn't go through, then we just don't go up to the max that's approved for the bond issue and we maybe just do the replacement.
I find that as a very risky strategy
Too
to
murky?
think about doing them in the same election. And I'm trying to think why I think that. Sorry, I just said that before really
And I
articulating.
think you increase the likelihood you're gonna get them both
No,
voted
Defeated,
down.
yeah. Well, so Scott, we know that we want to go in April.
I mean, I'm happy to make a motion and then just vote it.
Please.
You know, I mean, my motion would be that we put on the ballot the replacement and the indoor.
Second.
Okay, we probably need to do that in two separate motions, right?
Well, my understanding is he's saying that's one thing.
Yeah.
That,
I'm going the whole kit and caboodle.
right.
Okay,
Is there a
Alright.
second? Second.
okay. Is there discussion?
Yeah. I'm just concerned. That's a big chunk that we're going to be spending. And that's additional, that is 3.7 million that we'll be spending
Upfront.
upfront, and that might not be used. Like David, I'm sure, sound like you read all of the survey questions again, like I did. And there was maybe a half a dozen people said indoor pool would be great. And I'm concerned about the expense of it.
I've heard lots of people.
I saw a lot more than that. I don't know what you're,
I saw a lot of, I didn't see anybody definitive say that they would use the pool. And I had 2 phone calls from community members that said they would like to see the pool there. But they like to swim every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday for 45 minutes. I just don't.
I mean,
Okay.
to me, I think a new pool is the most exciting and the most realistic. And to add the indoor just sounds not like a luxury, but it just sounds not necessarily the right thing to do right now.
I think we are leaders in the region, and we were the last time we came out with a new pool, and we saw a lot of other municipalities jump in and follow suit with the leisure pool that we had. I think we would see the same thing happen if we chose a responsible indoor option. And I don't think we really know if we can recover fully that revenue, but I don't know that I still am optimistic that it's possible, because I think there's a deep interest in this community in having year-round swim options, and the Webster University pool does not meet that need. We no longer have a YMCA. We're sending people to the Kirkwood Y and Brentwood Y and elsewhere who would come back to Webster to use this pool if we offered year-round services, including a robust swim lesson program, because it is a huge interest in the younger families. And we have a lot of young families in this region, in our city. I am confident that we would not see it go unused.
And that was the reason
Yeah, Emerson,
why-
can we
Oh,
let
I'm sorry.
everybody go
Yes,
first and then
go ahead.
we'll follow up?
I'm not worried about it going unused. I think it'll be used. I think it'll be popular. I think it'll be a star. I mean, I think there's nothing else like it, and it's cool and it's unusual. My only concern is that we've just gone through this whole, couple of years with the budget. We've got it in a good place, and to kind of put ourselves, 200 grand or whatever it is, annually back, that we're back trying to get back up. That's my concern. If we can solve that by saying, are people willing to pay more in taxes for indoor, then I'm all for that. If we can't, then I feel like it's really hard for me to say I want an indoor option without having this is how we're gonna pay for it. I
David,
want
did
to be
you have
able to pay
anything
for it.
else
Like
you
I
want?
want it.
Yeah.
I just don't have that clarity.
Did you have anything else you wanted to say?
I mean, we're making a lot of assumptions, and understandably so. We're assuming that this is gonna be operating at a more significant loss than is possible. I agree with Sarah. I think that the need in this community and the desire is there. Based off of the people who responded to this survey, at least, I think that they are interested in this possibility. I also think that, we're trying to solve every future problem right now, when we can solve the future problem as they arise. When the pool is not being used, we figure out why it's not being used at that time. When we are not getting, when we look at admission rates, we figure out admission rates at that time. I think that we're trying to create perfection right now, when we don't need to create perfection. We just need to give a vision to the community. And I think that this gives a great vision.
So I appreciate the vision. I think the one thing that we're talking about here is if somehow we can invent a way to do something that no other city has been able to do, and it's not for lack of trying. I don't believe for a second that Clayton, I don't believe for a second that De Pere, all those pools that are at a 50% cost recovery haven't tried to figure out how to get it higher than that. So, while I love the if you build it, they will come model. There are things about the way pools are structured that makes cost recovery really hard. And that is also about, you talk about swim lessons. Well, you can only get a limited number of swim lessons in part because you're talking often about school-age children. You're talking about lap swim. Well, there are certain times of the day that people will swim laps. I don't see any pool users going from, 11:30 at night to 12:30 in the morning to play hockey necessarily. And we get to charge those 8 or 9 people 2 or 3 times what we would charge pool. So my concern is, to your point, David, we're trying to make something perfect. Well, I'm trying to just figure out how we can survive with this model for the same reason that Emily mentioned, which is the level of uncertainty when we have just gotten this far in our budget processes is really challenging for me to think about, because keep in mind, we already know, if we have Eric bring up his handy little chart, we already know our employment costs continue to increase faster than our revenues do. And we also have talked about, we got one-time revenues this time that aren't coming back again. So I've spoken more. I should have slowed down a little bit, but if anyone else has anything else they want to say, but I feel like this is a risk. My preference is to not do anything in terms of the infrastructure that doesn't allow us to go back to this decision in a few years. At that time, if it seems to make sense, then that would be great. Emerson, you had a follow up, and
Well, let me make sure I
David,
understand
you do too. So
what you were saying. You said you say it again?
I would like us to go ahead with the replacement plan, but make sure that we have not in any way precluded ourselves from going back to an indoor option in a few years
Oh,
if our
okay.
financial situation is such that we feel that's a good idea, or whoever's on council at that point.
And that was the purpose of my questions earlier of partnerships. Like there's a lot of swim clubs out there. I don't know if we build it, will they come and what revenue will be joined with that? The school district, Webster University, will they come if we build it? I mean, they can't give us a definitive yes and then back off at the last minute. They can do that, but I just think that amount is just large enough to make me reconsider putting indoor aquatics.
Can I ask, just to me, because I think this is also one of the fundamental issues we come back to every now and then, is how much cost recovery is required. Are we providing a service? Are we trying to generate revenue? And I mean, I think the answer definitively is we are not trying to generate revenue, right? We got lucky that the ice center in some ways is a revenue generator, but that's not really the expectation of our facilities. But what I'm not clear on is where this council stands on how much revenue has to be replaced for this to be a workable solution. Obviously it'd be ideal if we could replace 100%, but if we can't, what's a compromise? If we can figure out a way to make up that difference in the projections, what is that number, I guess? Like, is there a number?
I mean, for me, it's not the number so much, like if it costs us 200,000 and we vote as a council that that's good for the citizens, then I'm okay with that. It's where does that come from? So I don't have I'd be okay if it was 175 or 100. I just need to know whatever the number is, what adjustment, where's that going to come from? And I'm just nervous about going out for something and saying, do you want the replacement and the indoor? And then later going and saying, we can't afford the indoor and we need more taxes, because I feel like people will feel like we weren't upfront with them. And that's not the case, but I feel like that will not be perceived well. So that makes me a little anxious.
Since I'm the one who's on the financial part of this, to your question, I don't think we need 100%. 50% those that makes me really nervous. Is there somewhere in between? Probably 75%, but I honestly can't wrap my head around how we're going to really have, Scott has done a whole lot of work trying to figure out projections for us, and they are absolutely just projections. And I think we all have to accept that. And so to me, in the risk portion of this, we're at 50% plus we're not even sure what the numbers are. And that makes me nervous.
Oh,
So
the
it could,
addition.
so no, I don't believe we need 100% cost recovery.
The difference is right about $250,000 that will be short. You have a $31 million budget. To me, $250,000, I mean, we'll figure it out. If this was $1 million, I would say absolutely, this is a different question, but $250,000 to me is a different issue. I'm not saying I have 500,000 might have been a different issue, but 250, I think that we can figure it out.
I would note that I don't think that's the right budget number because we're talking about that includes all sorts of monies we can't touch to make this gap smaller.
It says expense budget 497.
No, I mean, our
Oh.
overall budget is a six.
Yes, okay, I'm sorry.
Somebody was gonna say something.
I was gonna
Pam.
ask the question of, is it just possible to extend the season? I mean, we'd have the same labor problems trying to find somebody during the day. But the pool is sitting there already. We've got 6 weeks of warm weather and the pool's not open. You know, at what point can we just extend that and just take the costs of additional salaries and operating costs and not have to have a facility to make it stay indoors 12 months of the year?
And I think we had that conversation to some degree. One of the other
Right.
times we've talked about this,
Right.
and I think, you know, at some point, we're just gonna have to make a decision. We have a current motion. We have a second. Are we ready to vote on that particular motion?
That included
Yes,
the
I am.
replacement and the indoor aquatics.
Yeah, would you restate your motion for us, David, just to be sure everyone understands?
My motion is that we put on the ballot as a one question combined replacement concept and the indoor aquatics. So, I mean, based off of this, we're looking at about a $15 million projected cost with those two
For the bond issue.
for the
yeah.
bondage, just for the pool. That's outside of anything else that we.
I know we have at least one member who does not want to vote right now. Can we proceed or, yeah, all right, then let's go to the vote. Yeah, exactly.
Proceed?
Please do.
Yes. Councilmember Bliss,
No,
Councilmember Franklin,
Yes.
Councilmember Smith,
No,
Councilmember Richardson,
Yes.
Councilmember Hickson Shepherd,
No.
Mayor Arnold.
No. All right. So now we have no proposal to send at the moment. So we need
So
another
I
motion.
would like to move that we vote on doing a replacement
replacement
in the
concept.
April ballot.
May I make a friendly request that the motion be amended to include that it makes that we don't do anything that makes an indoor option unavailable in the future?
Correct, yes.
Okay.
Or the
An outdoor
present, or
option,
just in the
but
future.
nothing that would preclude us doing something in the future,
Now or-
near future,
Yeah.
short-term future.
Sarah, you,
I'm just trying to clarify if that means that like we're taking indoor off the table period forever, or if that means that we're just tabling it for tonight.
well, you just voted not to send the two jointly to,
Right.
yeah.
Okay.
I know this
Do I need
one,
to
this
say it
is
again?
really hard. Yeah, go
Uh,
ahead, please.
So I move that we vote on whether we're gonna do a pool, the replacement pool. Without anything that would preclude us to add on the indoor Dynadome later.
So we need a second.
Second.
Is there additional discussion?
I can just say, I really wish there was a way to get public vote on the indoor option. I'm comfortable with my vote. I don't love it, but I'm comfortable with it, but I really wish that there was like still an open door to
Well, that is, we could just, this motion is just about getting the replacement pool on there.
Yeah,
We can go back and talk about a second question.
okay.
I think Scott and his team did an excellent job in getting feedback from the community, which had three meetings, Scott, 3 meetings and then some, so I think we've given our community ample opportunities to,
I don't think we,
Make
but
it
I
good.
understand. what you're saying.
uh,
I don't think most of the community knows that we're having this vote tonight.
well, the couple that I went to, there was quite a few people at the,
Oh, I know, but they also made it pretty clear in those groups that they wanted the indoor option. And that's not the deciding, like,
No.
the fact that they said that doesn't sway us. We did knock down the other options because they didn't want those. But I don't know. I don't feel like the community's being heard quite as much this time.
Is there additional discussion? No? All right, let's vote on that motion then, please.
Yes, Mayor. Councilmember Franklin,
No.
Councilmember Smith,
yes.
Councilmember Richardson,
No,
Councilmember Hickson Shepherd,
Yes.
Mayor Arnold,
Yes.
Councilmember Bliss.
Yes.
Now, having done all this, I know we have a couple members who still would like us to consider whether there is a way to put that indoor question directly on there. So can we please charge the city attorney with seeing what that might look like?
Yes.
And you will come back to us, I hope,
I will-
in September,
I
because
will-
the clock is
I will
ticking.
get you an email before the end of the week.
Okay.
Okay.
And then we will schedule for September sometime if we need to for September to revisit that issue.
This was a very good discussion.
Yeah,
I
well,
mean,
No.
I think it's an interesting issue, and I think that we all are raising really good points for a tough thing and a very good thing for the community. I mean, this is exciting, right? Like, I mean, regardless
It is
of how
exciting.
this is
Major
exciting.
plus for the community.
Yeah.
so.
And this is our, you vote individually, but then the agreement is a council agreement. So like, whatever we end up putting on the ballot, I mean, I will.
Absolutely.
totally support that.
Absolutely. This is a good thing
Right.
for the community.
Yes.
Do we need to talk about putting other things like parks?
Yeah, so
expanded?
we have talked about this being a more general bond issue. My understanding from the city manager was that we have a little more time to put that together, and they will put together a list of recommended items, and that we then will discuss those as a group and decide from there what the full bond issue is going to look like beyond the pool. The decision now is in effect to let Scott get moving on the preparation, because this really is the big item that would be part of that.
Okay.
Do you want to add anything to that?
Thank you, Mayor. Just for people listening who may be a little confused, the bond issue that is being discussed, that we're talking about additional items, all relate to Parks and Recreation. We would be discussing, do we include additional playground equipment, for example? So we are working on that list, and we will bring it back to council for discussion.
All right, I think that brings us, although we're way over time, brings us to the end of we were in the middle of it, so I didn't want to disrupt that.
Yep.
To our work session. Let's take 5 minutes and then we will start our regular meeting. And I will just say in advance, for those of you who are here, if you want to make a public comment, please go ahead and fill out a card.
Go ahead.
All right, welcome to the August 1st regular meeting of the Webster Groves City Council. We welcome questions, ideas, and comments from persons in attendance. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes. If you would like to make a comment and you haven't filled out a speaker card, please do so. If you are on Zoom and you would like to make a comment, we will, when we get to the appropriate point, if you'll use the raise your hand function, we will then recognize you at that time. We will start as usual with the roll call.
Mayor Arnold,
Here.
Councilmember Bliss,
Here.
Councilmember Franklin,
Here.
Councilmember Smith,
Here.
Councilmember Alexander is absent, Councilmember Richardson,
here.
Councilmember Hickson Shepherd.
Here.
All right, we will start with our remarks from the community and visitors. I do at the beginning of that would like to enter into the record with consent of the council, the letter that we all received from Jamie Hasselmeyer about the work of the Sustainability Commission and her sorry, I'm distracted here, and her leaving that commission. So we'll include that as remarks
Yes, ma'am.
today. And then I have 2 speaker cards that I see. And we will start with Evie Yost. If you'll come on forward, state your name and address, and then you'll have your 3 minutes.
My name is Evie Yost and I live at 524 Lee Avenue. It's easy to judge what you don't understand. It's easy to look at numbers, but it takes a willingness to understand the logic behind something. When there's a fire, is it one of you that will walk into that heat and smoke to face the unexpected? Is it one of you that has to tell someone that their loved one didn't make it? Are you a police officer that may have to arrest a confused teenager for a crime he doesn't even understand he committed? I'm not questioning the need for your positions, but I am questioning the quality in which you use your positions. City Council is meant to understand and better bridge the wheel of departments that make up this community. City Council is meant to trust its residents and encourage them to grow and to learn and actively take part in important matters. However, that can only be done if you choose to be transparent. Continuously blaming other departments for financial failure when you withheld positive budgetary information is not okay. And by your actions, you have damaged departments' reputations, which you unfortunately refuse to acknowledge, and that is not okay. You cannot create situations to make yourself essential to this community. Ultimately, do you want to be leaders who desire praise or loyalty? Praise is fickle and often superficial. Loyalty is earned when you put others before yourself and you right your wrongs, because it's better to fix things than to always be right in your own eyes. I say all this to genuinely ask, what kind of city council do you really want to be? Think on this. Thank you.
All right, thank you. We have a second card, and that is from Mr. Dave Buck.
Hello, Dave Buck, 124 South Elm. First of all, 2 weeks ago, I raised a question about City of the Arts, and Laura, I wanted to thank you for our sit down at the Garden Cafe. It was a great conversation. I appreciate it very much. On the swimming pool, and I am biased because my kids, like Laura's Mary, were lifeguards, pool managers, coaches of the Webster Waves, team members of the Webster Waves, and now I have 3 grandkids who swim on the Webster Waves. So I'm a big pool fan. Sarah, I'm right where you are, just so you know. Thank you for your comments. Secondly, Pam knows, a couple of weeks ago, I made a little talk to the Chamber of Commerce over at Ivory Crockett Park on the subject of creative thinking, shared a lot of ideas. Pam, thank you for your email afterwards. I really appreciate it. But my perspective on this pool is for you to think about this. Turn the clock back 30 years to 1993. When, as Scott said, no other municipality had a aquatic center or a water park. They had a rectangular pool, the standard swimming pool, but it wasn't the innovation. It wasn't a water park. It wasn't an aquatic center. Webster Groves was the first one to do it. Now think about if you were on city council back then, nobody else had it. There was no history. There was no data. You had to almost go on faith because you believed in the power of the idea. And you believed that it was a good idea for the community. And you almost did it on faith because you didn't have data to back it up. City leaders back then did that. Now, do you think that was a good decision? When you look over 30 years, you're damn right it was. That pool, that aquatic center is a community gem. And the thing is, a year ago, the community voted overwhelmingly, 80%, to pass Prop S, which was a no tax increase bond issue to renovate Moss Field. And have you seen the plans for the W? I mean, it's going to be gorgeous. Right next door is the rec center. Right next door is the pool. 30 years without a renovation, without it being touched. And as Scott said, it's crumbling. It's in really bad shape if you've been there. It needs to be fixed. So turn the clock back 30 years ago and have the bravery, the courage, and the faith to make it happen again to last the next 30 years. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, do we have any new business from any members of the council, city manager, city clerk? Right, where we'll go on to new business. Councilwoman Hickson Shepherd, could you call for the first and second reading of bill number 9232,
Yes,
please?
Mayor, I'd like to call for the first and second reading of bill number 9232.
Second,
Bill 9232, first reading. In ordinance, authorizing the appropriation of $682,900 for the purpose of defeasing a portion of the city's outstanding general obligation bonds, paying certain costs of such defeasance, and authorizing certain other actions in connection therewith.
Is there discussion? Second reading, please.
Bill 9232, second reading. In ordinance, authorizing the appropriation of $682,900 for the purpose of defeasing a portion of the city's outstanding general obligation bonds, paying certain costs of such defeasance, and authorizing certain other actions in connection therewith.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Franklin, could you call for the approval of the consent agenda? Actually, is there anything that needs to be removed first?
no, but I want to go to Bratfest.
They always are really good about putting their liquor licenses in town. Please proceed.
Yes, Madam Mayor, I'd like to call for the approval and adoption of the consent agenda.
Second.
Councilmember Bliss,
Yes.
Councilmember Franklin.
Yes.
Councilmember Smith,
Yes.
Councilmember Richardson,
Yes.
Councilmember Hickson Shepherd,
Yes.
Mayor Arnold.
Yes. We do not have any appointments to boards and commissions this evening. I do believe we have a very brief executive session. Councilmember Bliss, could you make that motion, please?
Yes, Mayor, I'd like to call for the executive closed session related to Missouri statute 610.021, open parens, 17, close parens.
Second.
Councilmember Franklin,
Yes.
Councilmember Smith,
Yes.
Councilmember Richardson,
Yes.
Councilmember Hickson Shepherd,
Yes.
Mayor Arnold,
Yes.
Councilmember Bliss.
Yes.
All right. Thank you all for joining us. We are going to